Everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you today with an article from The Federalist dated April 9th. And I don't miss any opportunity to rag on the Washington Post or even the New York Times if I possibly can. So I figured, what the heck, this is probably right up my alley. It's called The Washington Post is More Dangerous Than So-Called Russian Propaganda. And I actually have not read this article yet, but let's go into it and see what it says. It says, the Washington Post says Russian propaganda is eroding support for Ukraine. Apparently, the Post's own propaganda is the only type allowed. There's an unintentionally hilarious exclusive in the Washington Post this week claimed that Russian propaganda is both creating and exacerbating opposition among Republicans and dumping more money into the war in Ukraine, because everything with these leftists is Russian propaganda. Okay, I could say 1 + 1 is 2 in front of them, and they probably go, that's Russian propaganda. It says, and next week, the dark foreign influence campaign that has men hating Amy Schumer, it's probably Russian propaganda. Says apparently the only reason a plurality of Americans, 31% according to Pew Research, feels we've been financially shackled ourselves into a little too tightly to Ukraine, sinking hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars into a conflict we have no way to account for, is that Russia said so. Yep, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I've been against Ukraine money since day one. Says Russia has been ramping up its propaganda operations, the Post reported Monday, as part of a second front that current and former senior Western officials said has become almost as important for Moscow as the military campaign in Ukraine, especially as congressional approval for further aid has become critical for Kiev's ability to continue defending itself. An example of such allegedly poisonous propaganda was included at the very top. A fake American citizen created by a Russian communications firm who would somewhere be cited, presumably on social media, professing he doesn't support the military aid that the U.S. is giving Ukraine and considers that the money should be spent defending America's borders and not Ukraine's. He sees that Biden's policies are leading the U.S. towards collapse. That's like a lot of people think that. This isn't just like a bot. That's like a pretty common thought amongst at least the American right. In fact, a lot of people on the left, too, are picking up on that. So it says, raise your hand if you needed someone, real or fake, to tell you that the southern border has collapsed as a direct consequence of the president's policies, and everything else has gone to hell for the same reasons. Yeah. Jeez. As dumb and gullible as the media believe middle-class Americans are, and believe me, they do think that, says nobody goes to the grocery store or the gas station right now and finishes up saying, all my money is gone, but I really can't wait to send another $20 billion to Ukraine. As likewise, nobody is seeing the shocking images of the hordes of foreign men bum-rushing their way through the border and thinks, hey, that's neat. As the Post nonetheless referred darkly to Russia's increasingly sophisticated strategy to interfere in the U.S. political system by way of disseminating messages. The intent, the Post said, is to cultivate an environment which Americans are not ready to sacrifice their well-being for the sake of conflict in Ukraine. They really said that? Why would we? Why would we sacrifice ourselves for a conflict that has absolutely nothing to do with us and never did? And then it says in parentheses here, it says, I'm not, but the Post and the rest of establishment in Washington are ready to do it for you. Yeah, they're basically going to be okay with, their sons and daughters are not going to go anywhere, but, your sons and daughters are going to be going to fight for Ukraine. How do you like that? As the elaborate Russian scheme is said to include Kremlin-linked political strategists and trolls who have written thousands of fabricated news articles, social media posts, and comments that promote American isolationism, stir fear over the United States border security, and attempt to amplify U.S. economic and racial tensions. As if Russians are spending a single dollar with the hopes of instigating racial tensions in America, someone really needs to tell them to save their money. No shit. As we've already got MSNBC and the Washington Post to do that for us. As for the rest, maybe Democrats can just tell Biden to be a better president. Turning off the internet won't fix the border or put more money in my account, and I can promise it's not some marvel of Russian geopolitical ingenuity that Americans aren't as sexually aroused as Max Boot at the thought of Ukraine receiving more funds. That's pretty funny. As the war is 2 years old with no end in sight, and its continuation serves no benefit to us normal Americans here. As we're not exactly living in luxury at the moment, why would anyone feel the urgency to prioritize the problems of Eastern Europe when Washington won't fix the fundamental ones we have on our own? Yeah, let's fix all of our neighbors' problems, at least speaking from like a neighborhood perspective, but let's not actually help fix things in our own home. Says the Russian propaganda nonsense is just as big as a threat in 2024 as it was in 2016, which the Post claims is when the Russian government deployed a network of trolls, creators of fake social media accounts, to spread disinformation boosting the presidential campaign of Donald Trump and seeking to sabotage Hillary Clinton's candidacy, including stories using material hacked from the Clinton campaign. Says, and notice how the Post conflates real material with disinformation because it hurt the media's preferred candidate. And also, we've already debunked that. Like, we know for a fact, it's been proven that Hillary Clinton is the one that started this entire thing. And she's even out there trying to be like, oh no, it's Russian disinformation, and no one's asked her about this, but like, we know that she did it. So like, I'm sure there's, to some degree, this actually is happening, but just to keep going back to the whole, it's Russian propaganda. It's in, like it says here, nonsense. That's exactly what it is. It was a ridiculous claim in 2016, and it's a ridiculous claim now. Recall the diabolically genius ways Democrats and the media say Russians spread disinformation back then. One meme during the election promoted by the account Army of Jesus depicted Jesus Christ arm wrestling Satan and was captioned, Satan, if I win, Clinton wins. Jesus, not if I can help it. Well, Satan wasn't actually wrong about that. This is another ad said, stop Trump, stop racism. I don't recall Trump saying a single racist thing, but okay. So this, a third personal favorite featured an illustration of then Democrat candidate Senator Bernie Sanders wearing only a Speedo and flexing for gay rights. I mean, the whole Bernie wearing a Speedo thing, I don't want to see that, but that would probably be pretty funny. So it's worth noting that Democrats lied to their teeth about accounts having originated from hostile actors in Russia, as the Twitter files showed. Because moreover, not a single vote was demonstrably swayed by any of it, that we do know as well, and it's absurd to think Americans aren't passionately devoted to Ukraine purely because they've been manipulated by deceitful propaganda. Was something else I was going to add here. I do remember seeing that they said that absolutely no votes were swayed by any propaganda. So for them saying it's Russian propaganda, it's like, do you think people are more aware of what's happening now, it seems to me? Like, do you think they're going to fall for it now? Because I certainly don't think so. Says if only changing public opinion on the matter was so simple, the Post might have been more successful in its own pro-Ukraine propaganda campaign, which it wages at the extreme peril of setting the U.S. and our European allies in an existential conflict with a nuclear power. Since the conflict began, the Post has published countless articles and columns either romanticizing the conflict as a fight for democracy, it says Ukraine has suspended elections and President Vladimir Zelensky closed down information outlets critical of his leadership even before the war, or suggesting that Russia was on the cusp of defeat. And I was going to actually add this when it said the conflict is a fight for democracy, but also he's, I think, shut down all the churches there as well. So he's basically become an authoritarian dictator. And we're saying it's a fight for democracy, which it absolutely is not at this point. So it looks like we're going to get a smattering of headlines from the Washington Post itself here, starting with Ukraine is winning the information war, and that's Washington Post on March 1st of 2022. This is Russia losing the war from March 14th of 2022. Putin, accustomed to losing, is increasingly isolated as war falters. That's from December 30th of 2022. It says pressing for elections would now would weaken the Ukrainian democracy. It's from October 1st of 2023. It says Ukraine remains stronger than you might think. It's from February 21st of this year. It says maybe the Post should try a meme with Zelensky in a Speedo. Yeah, there you go. So scrolling all the way back up. So, I mean, I'm not necessarily, well, yeah, I guess I would agree with this now that I'm thinking about it. I was about to say I wouldn't necessarily agree with the headline, but actually I kind of do. The Russian propaganda, as the author here pointed out, is something that really didn't affect any votes a few years ago, and the Washington Post are the ones putting more things out there, and more people, I would say, would be influenced by them. So I would go ahead and actually say, yes, I do agree with this. Do you agree with this headline here that the Washington Post is more dangerous than Russian propaganda? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.